Hello, everyone. This is Father Albert Coutier at St. Benedict's Episcopal Church, also known as Padre Alberto. And on my Spanish radio program, I've been noticing lots of people watching our videos and making comments about not being able to understand. So I've decided I'm going to do a reflection in English too, one in Spanish and one in English. And I'm sure all of you have heard your kids say things like, that's not fair. Don't you love when they do that? That's not fair, Daddy. That's not fair, Mommy. Or they tell their teachers, teacher, that's not fair. That's one of their biggest complaints, for kids. Actually, some adults do that too. Because there's a lot in life that isn't fair. But today there's a parable of Jesus that's quite controversial. It's Matthew 20, 1 through 16, where Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven being like this landowner who went out looking for laborers, and he paid the same thing to the ones who got there at the last minute as to those who worked all day. They were paid exactly the same thing, whether they began early in the morning under the heat of the sun and struggled all day and sacrificed and worked all day. Paid the same thing to those who got there in the last minute, at the last hour. And so at the end, of course, it becomes problematic because some of these guys are feeling, hey, wait a minute, what happened here? You weren't fair to us. And then at the end, he's like, wait a minute. The owner says, I can do whatever I want with my money. And at the end of the day, well, he was right, but that's where that phrase comes from. So Jesus says, well, so the last will be first and the first will be last. And of course, there's a lot of theological explanations for that. It has a lot to do with the people of Israel and who accepted the kingdom and who didn't. But I'm not here to do a lot of theology. I want to keep it, speaking plainly, hablando claro. The truth is, my friends, God's math and our math is never the same. I remember when I was very small and they started saying, well, we believe in one God, just one God. And then they said, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Well, sounds like three to me. It says, no. It's one God and three divine persons. One equals three in God's world. 3 and 1, 1 and 3. In our world, that's never mathematically true. But that's God's math. It's different than ours. And of course, you've seen how Jesus, had the parable of the good shepherd, the one that had the 100 sheep, and then 99 of them went the right path. 99 stuck together. They did what was right. They followed the shepherd. One got lost. One was wayward. And Jesus says, guess what? The shepherd went after the lost sheep until he found it. Mathematically, we never do that. Come on. Think about it. Stock market, in any kind of business. You keep the 99 you've got and forget about the one you lost. You count your losses, you move on. And not God. God's math is so different than ours. But yeah, we want to be fair. We want to be just. We want to be equitable. We want to do what's right. We want to be good. And at the end of the day, Jesus is speaking about the greatness of God. How God thinks so differently than we do as human beings. The goodness and the generosity of God is so great, my friends. And that's why he uses these parables that confuse the heck out of us sometimes, to tell you the truth. But he uses them so that we think about how different God's ways are from our ways. And I've come to love this Matthew 21 through 16. Because I understand this thing of, the last will be first and the first will be last. I've seen it so many times. It's funny, the other day I was at the supermarket and I was kind of standing there and, we have this social distancing going on now in our world. And so, this gentleman and his daughter just kind of cut me off and got in front of me in line. I guess they weren't counting those dots that are on the floor, where you're supposed to stand. And they were distracted, so I didn't say anything. I just let it be, but they just never noticed that they were supposed to stand on these spots that are designated to stand in line, and they saw space and they went boom and they cut me off. Sometimes it happens in traffic where, you're waiting your turn and somebody will come and cut you off. The last shall be first. The first shall be last. It happens all the time in our lives. It happens in our world. Not everybody who gets a promotion deserves it. Not everybody who, gets opportunities are the most qualified for them. But it happens in our world all the time. So is God unjust? I don't think so. I think God's different. God's ways are different. God's system is different. And that's why you and I should learn to be more generous. I believe that's why Jesus gave us this parable. That's why it's in the Christian scriptures in the New Testament. Matthew 21-16. So the kingdom of heaven is like this. He paid the same thing to those who got there last. And so we have to struggle with this line. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. What does it mean to me? Because God is a good, generous God. God's math is different than our math. God's way of thinking is different than our way of thinking. God doesn't judge things the way that we judge them. And ultimately, that's what we struggle with in the spiritual life. How to make sense of these difficult parables. How to make sense of these inspirational challenges that God puts in our way. And so, you have to change your mouth when you go from English to Spanish, de español al inglés. And oftentimes you'll hear me get stuck, and it's because I'm trying to adjust my mouth from speaking English to Spanish, Spanish to English. It happens. But I'm so glad to be with all of you. I hope you'll subscribe to this channel because I hope to just offer practical inspiration, practical ideas, religious and non-religious stuff, mostly non-religious stuff really, because my media work has always been in the secular world, and so I'm very happy to be able to be with all of you through this channel and share a little bit of life with you. And hopefully whatever we talk about here will inspire you to live a better life, regardless of your religious tradition, your culture, your background. I hope to be able to offer a few words of wisdom and inspiration, and we can laugh together, think together, and hopefully grow together. And I always say in Spanish, ánimo, que para Dios nada es imposible. So I would say, don't lose faith. Ánimo. Be strong. Be encouraged. Cheerful heart. I guess that's what ánimo would be like, Have a cheerful heart. Nothing's impossible for God. See you soon.